Are you ready to perform at your highest potential? Thank you for joining this GP Strategies webinar, where we'll explore best practices and innovative insights to help you and your organization improve performance.
Okay, welcome everyone. We're going to get started here. I see some people are still logging in, but we'll just give everybody a chance to log in. And while that's happening, I just want to say hello and welcome to everyone who's joining today's webinar, Combating Organizational Ambiguity to Achieve Successful Change. My name is Kim Heyer. I'm with GP Strategies, and I'm happy to be your host for today's session. Before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple of bullet points. First, everyone's lines have been muted, and we are recording today's session, and you will receive a copy of the presentation as well as a link to view the recording in case you miss any part of it or would like to share it with some of your colleagues. We send that within 24 hours after this webinar. If by chance you are having any technical issues, just send me a chat directly and I will help you as best as I can. Also, we want this time to be as interactive as possible, so we're going to encourage you to contribute during today's webinar. If you have any comments or want to engage in any kind of conversation during the presentation, use the chat and use the chat for any questions that you have for the presenter as well, or your attendees. But also, if you do have any specific questions, use the Q&A option, and during the presentation, we'll answer those questions. And if we have time at the end, we will then get a chance to answer them then. So without any further ado, let's have a great session today. And before we start, I want to introduce you to today's presenters. We have Cheryl Jackson. She is the Organizational Design and Change Practice Lead at GP Strategies. She's an industrial organizational psychologist with 15 years of experience designing and implementing talent management solutions across a variety of industries, specializing in job design, assessment, and engagement. And we also have Julyan. He is a certified change management practitioner with over 30 years of experience successfully delivering change solutions to a broad spectrum of clients across multiple industries. We have a great session planned for today. So with that, I'm going to pass the baton over to you guys and let you take it from here. Have a great session.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. All right, thank you guys for joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here and have this great conversation about the effects of ambiguity on organizational change management success. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to set the stage for why we are here and talk a little bit about ambiguity in general, define what that means. We're going to ask exactly what do you guys feel like ambiguity means. We're going to talk about the risks of managing and mitigating risks so you can get those outcomes, and then talk about the benefits realization piece that's in jeopardy when ambiguity is present on change projects. So that's our agenda for today, and we're going to move forward. So let's set the stage. So what's happening here? A lot of organizations struggle when it comes to ROI. A lot of cases, the ROI is not even a part of the driving factors as projects are implemented, because we focus so much on go live and getting a system up and running when you look at it from an IT technology perspective. But the thing that can actually impede or hamper any type of ROI being achieved is having a lot of ambiguity. And what are some of the aspects that can cause ambiguity as well? If you think about it, siloed business units. You have business units that exist, and the downstream, upstream of a particular business unit may not have a clear picture of what one business unit does versus the other. Or one business unit tosses something over the fence, and as long as they meet their goals and objectives, that they don't see the integrated aspect of how their decisions affect the enterprise. And then another aspect is having very customized or specialized systems in place where you don't get the true benefit of an integrated process. And a very important one that I'm going to stress here is the ambiguous processes. And I'll give you an example. This is real life. It happened last week. One of my clients, we were talking about support model processes. And I asked, did they have current processes that manage everything from an issue, intake, all the way to resolution? And I had two people on the call to do this. And I was like, no, don't do that. And then the CIO chimed in. He was actually on the call and said, we do have processes, but the concern or the issue with that particular scenario is that the processes they have been violated so much that they are non-existent and they do not follow protocol. So a lot of ambiguous processes were part of the issue that they have. And even though they have processes, when those get mitigated or get muddled, and you cannot, you don't know whether this is a way of doing work or it was a process that was implemented years ago and no one's following it, then that was the issue with that particular client. It was so much ambiguity around whether we actually have processes versus whether we're following the processes. And that makes a world of difference in terms of reaching that particular ROI that you're planning to reach. So let's define this word ambiguity. Ambiguity, when I researched this, I thought, wow, that's pretty straightforward definition. It's a word, it's a process, it's a scenario that has the capability of being understood two or more possible senses or ways. And we've all seen scenarios where these ambiguity exists. So think about those and the anxiety and the things that occur in our personal lives when ambiguity exists. And we're trying to roll out these projects with all this ambiguity, not only about what we're trying to accomplish, but the ambiguity that's associated with the whole change management aspect of it. So all those contribute to a lot of frustration and angst around what we're trying to accomplish on a particular project. So think about that. And especially when different business units have different approaches and different strategies. So the alignment and understanding and the clarity around what we're trying to accomplish is clear, needs to be clear. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this. I subscribe to CIO Dive. It's a daily digest about CIOs and activities that will make them successful in their current roles. One of those scenarios, one of the digests I got just the other day, says CIOs need to focus on revenue generation faster. And the last sentence in that article says, clarity is key. Well, clarity eliminates ambiguity. So think about that from that perspective. So what can ambiguity result in? If you have duplication of efforts, obviously that's going to be something that affects your bottom line output of what you're trying to accomplish.
Julyan, I'd love to chime in here if you don't mind.
Sure, Cheryl.
You had a great transition into what I'd like to talk about here is organizational ambiguity resulting in lack of clarity. And when we have a lack of clarity, in the organizational design world, that's primarily what we focus on. Clarity is such a key component of engagement, satisfaction, organizational efficiency, and effectiveness across the board. And the lack of clarity breaks down all of those critical components that lead to organizational effectiveness. And this is no different. So when we have a lack of role clarity, it raises the question, who is in charge? Who's tying all of these pieces together? We work with clients right now that have a number of different change components and change initiatives going on at the same time. And we say, how do the employees know that these are not the exact same program, or what's different about them, or why they should attend this one versus that one, or should they attend both? What's the message? And is there anyone tying these together? And they say, no, there's really not. There's no one connecting those dots for anyone. And so when we look from the outside, we say, wow, is there a duplication of efforts here just on the initiatives that are being rolled out? And then from the employee standpoint, they're getting all of this information thrown at them, and they're really confused as to what should be getting done and how they should be engaging with the work that's coming out to them. And so a lot of work being done in that space, leading to this loss of synergistic efforts of having a cohesive unit moving forward together. That also leads to this misalignment between business units. So we have two business units that have different priorities because there isn't this singular overarching focus, this someone tying those dots together. So they're slightly interpreting their messages differently. They're saying our goals, this is how I'm interpreting this message that I'm receiving from the top. A little bit of ambiguity goes a long way. And just a little bit of drift can mean that these business units are actually not marching along the same path. So we have some misalignment. Again, efforts are being duplicated because now we're not really clear on where those lines are drawn. And so that misalignment starts to create a lack of synergy. Both of these resulting in a loss in ROI from the initiative. Like, why aren't we seeing the benefits of what we're putting out there? It's because we don't have a real clear idea of what everyone should be doing, what role they're supposed to be playing, and how everyone lines up to this connection point. So when we don't move in unison, we lose those synergistic benefits, but it also creates a duplication in effort. And then finally, we have this natural resistance to change. We naturally resist what we don't understand. If we go all the way back to the days of hunting and gathering, one change could result in us losing our homes or not having enough food for the winter. We needed to really be prepared. Our ancestors really needed to be prepared, and change was dangerous. It was unsafe. And we still carry some of those tendencies with us. And many of us we don't like change very much. It raises a lot of questions. Am I going to be good at this new way of doing things? Is it going to slow me down? Is it going to put me at risk potentially of losing my job? So we get scared of this potential change and the effects it can have on us. And so we have that natural resistance, and any uncertainty can raise enough doubt to result in significant resistance that can be managed if we get in front of it appropriately. So that's what we're going to be talking about next, is mitigating risk and achieving those outcomes. So if you could go ahead and switch on over, scroll us over a couple of slides. How can organizations overcome these risks to ambiguity? First of all, we are pretty good at setting big goals and building momentum toward those big goals. What we need to do is set smaller goals along the way. I don't know how many of you are parents, but I have young children, and I still remember when they were learning to walk, and when they would even start to move in the direction of picking up those legs or standing up, we were praising every single step in the right direction, no matter how small. And that's what we have to do for employees in the organization. As they start to make those behavior shifts, as they start using the right language, we need to celebrate that. We are really good at telling people what they're not doing right and how they're going back to their old ways, but we need to celebrate more when they start moving in the right direction. So celebrate all the wins along the way, reinforce the behaviors that support the change, even if it's not 100% accurate or 100% on target with the fully developed change. Next, we want to start building a culture of resilience and change readiness now, before we're ready to start the initiative. Change readiness is something we can do ahead of the change versus just-in-time learning and preparedness. So as an organization, we can start developing those skills that will put us in the right place, the right mindset to be prepared for that change when it happens so that we can step into it and more readily adapt to it in the moment, developing our leaders to step into those sponsorship roles when a change hits so that they can walk their employees through it effectively. Those are things you can do ahead of time and should start doing ahead of time, knowing that change is on the horizon or a new initiative or a program is on the horizon. That's something we should do now ahead of time. And then thirdly is ask difficult questions. Many times we think if we don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. And I know many of you are like, oh, that doesn't make any sense at all. Absolutely, it doesn't make sense. But it's a natural thing. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it because then I can pretend like it's not there. As leaders in an organization, we need to draw these questions out of our employees. What are you hesitant about? What are you concerned about? What are your obstacles or struggles with this initiative? Ask me, tell me, so that I can help answer these questions, so I can dig them out of you and help walk you through it. On the same side, our leaders need to be asking these hard questions of their leaders, of the top executives in the organization, so they're understanding the change fully, that they're understanding what's happening in the organization, the direction that we're going, so that they can communicate that to their employees. These difficult questions must be asked and talked about. We don't want to stuff them under the rug because they will be asked in groups outside of where they need to be, where the right people aren't in the room to answer the questions. And that can be dangerous for a culture, for an initiative, for an organization as a whole. Fourthly, we need to ensure executive sponsorship and alignment. And this is where we can start developing those things early. But when we talk about sponsorship, we know that ultimately whatever top leaders and executives support, that is where the momentum is going to be. That's what's going to last and have the staying power within an organization. We can talk all day about what we want, what we want to happen, and HR members often struggle with this. We're like, this is what we want. This is where we're trying to go. And then you have executives who aren't fully supporting that. And we as an organization, as an HR organization, can never get the same momentum that a few executives can carry, because ultimately that's what's being reinforced. That's where promotions are coming from. That's where praise is coming from. That's who they're looking up to. So we have to have alignment all the way throughout the organization. And then Kim, if you wouldn't mind sharing the visual for this next step, address change readiness. This is where I talked a little bit on the last slide about this natural resistance to change that many of us have. So there are some common causes of resistance, mistrust and lack of confidence. And these came out of an article that some of our team members at Chief Strategies wrote. I think we're going to share that with y'all. But these are some common causes of resistance: mistrust and lack of confidence, emotional responses, so those natural fears that are lifetimes in the making, fear of failure, poor communication, and unrealistic timelines. We can address many of these challenges with our organizations and our team members by leaders giving them this is what we call our R2P2 model, laying out a role for them. That's role clarity. What is your role in this change? What are we asking you to do? Giving them a clear reason for the change, attaching that meaning to them. What are we doing this for? Why does it matter? Are we just doing this for the sake of change, or is there a reason for it? Laying down a clear path for the change. How am I going to get from here to there? Don't be ambiguous about it. Don't be unclear. Tell me exactly how I want to get there. I want to keep my job. I need to put food on the table. I love what I'm doing. Help me do this effectively. Give them a clear path, and then be a partner for them. Hold their hand along the way. Be a mentor. Be there to support them throughout this difficult, potentially scary change that's happening throughout your organization. No ambiguity. Lay it all out there and be very clear. And that visual is shared with you. So I ask you to take a look at that, keep it, take it home with you, and use it in your next initiative. Back to you, Julyan.
Excellent, Cheryl. Thank you. You just laid out some very valid points of how to mitigate and make ambiguity go away. If you have a reason, you have a role, that clear path, and then a partner, as our R2P2 model suggests, will make ambiguity just pretty much disappear if you follow that methodology, that approach, and allow yourself to reach that certain aspect that you're trying to accomplish with this project. And with the implementation or the execution of models such as this, you have a better opportunity to get to your business realization, benefits realization, where you think about, okay, why are we doing this project and what do we expect to get out of it? Because a lot of times that can be just as ambiguous. So I'm going to ask a polling question here as we go into benefits realization. When have the benefit realization discussions happen on projects that you've worked on? I think there are 3 to 4 answers you could respond to here. So if you will, let's take a poll and see exactly when you've had benefit realization discussions. And we'll give you a minute or two. Okay, Kim, are we getting responses or?
We sure are.
Okay.
They're still coming in.
Awesome.
Yeah, just give them, I think people are just thinking about it a little bit. Give them a minute.
Okay, no worries.
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of a question of when is it currently happening and when do I think it should happen? Which way am I answering this?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna, looks like most people have responded, so give me time. I'm gonna end it now, okay?
Sure. Can we have a couple of the responses?
We do. It looks like the majority said throughout the initiative.
Okay.
16 out of 39, followed closely behind with 11 by at the beginning. And then toward the end, further down the end, we have clustered at the end, I don't know, and we never discuss benefit realization. So throughout the initiative and at the beginning are pretty close.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Well, that aligns with the right approach for benefits realization. For those that may have chosen or thought about, well, we never talk about benefit realization. What does that mean in terms of the projects that we're implementing? Well, that's a critical misalignment and a critical part to allowing ambiguity to exist. We have to have goals and objectives to set forth for us to reach what we plan with these projects that we're implementing. So let's talk a little bit about what benefit realization means and what a benefit realization plan should look like that will allow this ambiguity to go away when you're having these discussions. The polling question is up. I'm sorry. Get that out of the way. Okay. For benefit realization, adoption is key. So what is adoption? That's where we're embracing the system as our own. We're embracing the change and committed to making it work and looking for opportunities to improve. And we've clearly adopted and decided that, hey, this is this new status quo, and we're going to take this new initiative and we're going to embrace it and make it our own and get the most out of it. So adoption is key. And there's several ways you can measure adoption, but adoption is the lead in to benefit realization. So how do you get that benefit realization to happen? What points need to be discussed during that discussion? So if you think about it, the old adage, what gets measured gets done. That's what you want to think about with benefit realization, where you're assigned owners of every aspect that's going to be measured. Someone has to take ownership, right? And someone has to determine exactly what's going to be measured. What are we looking at and how are we going to get that data and how often are we going to report that? And here's a key point that's worth stressing and really targeting in on. Who is responsible if we do not make the attainment of the measures, right? Who's going to create that approach to address that slippage? How do we build in the accountability that needs to occur? And then we have to align on what rewards and strategies exist, and then establish timelines to address these issues and the targets that we achieve. And then also communicate the performance targets to the organization. Let everyone know what we're trying to accomplish with this project. And have a client that's going through this today that's looking at, all right, what do we need to measure with this technology piece that we're implementing. And it was to some of your points in the poll, it was an afterthought, right? It's what do we need to look at? And a lot of times driving people's focus towards benefit realization early in the project lifecycle is the best time to do it, right? If you take on what the CIO dive stated, that if revenue generation and ROI and getting to bottom line results is a faster, more focused effort that CIOs need to take, then benefit realization needs to be a part of that conversation early on. That eliminates that ambiguity. Cheryl, we've said a lot.
We sure have. Yes, and I know, Kim, you were saying we may not have time for Q&A. It looks like we have 4 minutes left.
Okay.
Do you think we have time for a question or two?
Yeah, if anybody would like to submit a question through the chat or Q&A option, then Cheryl and Julyan will be able to answer that. We do just have a couple minutes left. Okay. If we don't have any, I don't see any coming through right now. People are being shy today.
I know we just put a lot of information on here really fast, and so it's probably still digesting a little bit.
We do have one question that just came through right now. Did you see it?
Is there a good strategy on how to influence executives?
Yes. Cheryl, you want?
Go ahead, Julyan.
Yes. Yes, there are a lot of good strategies on how to influence executives. One is to have that clear alignment and have all the executives on the same page, marching to the same beat. And if there is misalignment, then you close that gap by having each one take ownership and responsibility for their respective verticals and make it a little bit competitive on that from that perspective. This is the goal that we're trying to accomplish, and this is how we're going to get there. And everyone needs to be aligned on that. And then holding executives accountable as you would anyone else in the change process.
Okay, we have 2 more minutes left. There's a question from Laura. How do you recommend a feedback loop to be established to adjust strategy to prior unknown factors that warrant it? Cheryl, Julyan?
Yes, I can take the first stab at this one. So establishing governance model over your initiative and the strategy ahead of time, laying out that feedback loop early on is so critical and often not used. We're not thinking about collecting feedback because we really don't want it. We have thought through everything. We don't really want to change anything because we've thought through everything. But putting in a loop to collect some of this information back to consider some of those things that we just did not know about or we didn't consider, and building in early, how are we going to collect this information? How's it going to come through? Oftentimes it is through HR team members, but we're starting to see champions within the organization being some of those feedback loop carriers, where they're actually part of the organization, but also part of the initiative. And I keep using HR because that's so often where change initiatives come from, but the more you can get it out of HR, the better. But having them embedded in the organization where they are a champion and a change agent, they're collecting that information and communicating it back, whether it's monthly or through email channels or quarterly, to collect some of that and have it as a pathway to connect with those developing the strategy and continuing to evolve it is critical to getting that information back up. And if you don't, that swirl is going to stay within your organization and continue to develop resistance.
Yeah, one additional point. The key is that the change champions are typically peers or influencers within the organization. So it's people that people within the organization in their department trust. So if they're a liaison between the project and the affected stakeholders, then that allows that trust and just seamless amount of communication to occur between those individuals.
Absolutely, and so especially critical with global strategies. Yes, surprises across the board, and how do you get that information from the deepest parts of other countries or other locations and get it back to where the strategy is being developed? So many times those are black holes. We miss that. They're blind spots, and we need those agents to continually to bring that information back in. Critical to lay that out at the beginning. It's part of your enablement practice. Yes, great
Okay.
questions.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you, Julyan. Also, there was a question asking about the link again. I just posted it in the chat for anybody who missed the link to the R2P2 model. And we are at the end of our time here. So I first want to thank again to our presenters, and I thank everybody for joining us today, for your time and attention. And we hope you'll join us again for another of our upcoming webinars. So visit GP Strategy's website to see future sessions, and I wish everyone on the call a wonderful and productive rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This webinar is brought to you by GP Strategies. Together we can create a world where business excellence makes possibilities achievable. You can access more webinars or download additional resources at gpstrategies.com/resource-library.